And we're live with our 130th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. Ken and I were talking this last week. I realized that we've been doing this, for 3 years now, right? We started in 2018.
3 years as of this last January, so we're a little over now.
Yeah, we're a little over. So congratulations to us, apparently. But I guess if that's what you want to call it, there's been a couple weeks. We take vacations and things, but it's been good. There's been quite a few items in the news recently. We are, and actually, we didn't talk about this pre-show, Ken, but I'm involved with Hacker Tracker with DEF CON planning. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there this year, because there's been a couple of meetings and things like that, and basically everybody's like, I don't know. We don't know what we're going to do. No one knows up until 2 weeks before, which makes it really hard to plan any sort of a conference because, number one, right, the number of people, how much you can plan on for, just money to pay for stuff, right? Number two, the number of villages and other things that they have. And, all those people have to decide whether or not they want to come or if they want to run it virtually. How do you stream virtually at the same time as having people on site if you're doing a hybrid conference? And then it's the hacker crowd that has traditionally not wanted to have any sorts of records. And now we're going to have to ask them to register so we can plan, right? It's just this whole weird dichotomy of, or conglomerate of different competing interests. And anyway, but Black Hat is on. They are doing virtual trainings this year though. So Ken and I, if someone has an opinion on whether or not they'd like to do virtual training for the code review course, hit us up, right? Because we're trying to decide whether or not it's worthwhile for us to do. We prefer the in-person classes, but we are willing to do virtual as well. There's some things that we can do to make that a better, not necessarily a better, but at least give it the same sort of feel as an in-person. But let us know. Anyway, so apparently I'm going off on conferences today.
No, actually, I was going to ask if people, so we can gauge interest and opinions. If people want to email us at absoluteappsec@gmail.com, please do, because again, we're just sitting here debating if it makes sense to do. We don't know if there's a ton of interest in the virtual platform. We're already working on, it's not going to be somewhere we do training, but we are working on a very small in-person meetup for one of our next mid-summers potentially. So there's a lot for us going on, and we're trying to decide if this makes sense. So yes, if you have input, absoluteappsec@gmail.com, or DM us on Slack, whichever you prefer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, we know that the Black Hat conference, right? It's quality trainings that are there. So it's always good. They do a pretty good job of curating content and curating training courses, but virtual just isn't. I mean, personally, virtual is not my favorite, because I do like to be in the room with people and have those conversations, which we don't always get on the virtual side of things. People are less apt to ask questions and to actually speak up when they have to do it in a virtual format. So,
I definitely feel a little virtualed out at this point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I haven't been tracking the last couple of months, right? I haven't been tracking a lot of conferences or talks or, much as far as virtual assets go. I mean, maybe that's just a result of being so busy with everything else that's going on, right? I know you too. Just work has been crazy as things have started to open back up. It feels like my day has just gotten worse and worse. But
for me, it's because we've expanded so much on the GitHub security team. We've added so much headcount that there's the logistics of just interviewing people and getting people through the pipeline and building all that collateral and making sure that we have the right people scheduled. There's that alone I'm learning is when you do like all at once, a bunch of headcount is a very difficult to manage thing. It's not impossible. It's not like you can't do it well. You can. Thankfully, we're set up well to do it, but it's so time intensive. So it's unbelievable. Yeah. Anyways.
Well, and I mean, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, like onboarding, resources and, just finding juniors and encouraging people to be like juniors in the space. But like you forget from a company perspective and from a senior perspective how much time that actually takes. And even getting people that are experienced in the field onboarded to a company is no joke, right? Like it's not hey, here's an hour-long discussion and you're going to learn everything that you need to know. It just doesn't happen that way. So anyway, well.
Yeah, one thing I'm excited about with our change is that now we're working, because like security labs was not part of security, believe it or not, at GitHub previously. So all that cool research and all that work was actually outside of our department. So now we're all under security. And that is going to mean that we get to work a lot more closely. So for me, that's just like, I know I'm just talking about my own personal stuff on the podcast, but whatever. It's actually like pretty nice. And that's a nice change. So whatever. It's our podcast. I'll talk about what I want. Don't judge me. Anyways, speaking of which, we don't have a ton to talk about today, I think, because just we have, like, as you mentioned, been so swamped lately. Yeah.
Well, I did want to bring up that I think the segment stuff that came out over the last week, 2 weeks, right? And I know we have, is it Javil? Is that his name?
Javon.
Yeah. Sorry, Javon. I know we've got him coming on the podcast to talk about it because that's super interesting. And threat modeling is always one of those issues. So basically, if you haven't seen it yet, and we'll post this again, obviously, once.
Yeah, I think it's next week, actually.
Yeah, is he coming on next week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, yes, it is next week. So next week he's coming on to talk about his open source. If you want to find the link, So because like he open sourced that training material and is going to come on to like basically walk everyone through it. And he's so nice that he, because internally for us, GitHub, Jason White, who's been on the podcast, he's on our team. He leads awareness at GitHub, which is like, encompassing of a lot of things, but part of that's obviously training. So he's doing the threat modeling training to get our developers up to speed on how to do their own threat models. We're trying to make things a little bit more self-service, as I've talked about on the podcast many times. So this is one effort going towards that. And so now, like, he's so nice that he reached out and was like, hey, if Jason wants to, coordinate and, share information, but, really like hear how I did it, the pitfalls, the good things, all that stuff, like hit me up. So I forwarded his information, but yeah, that's how it's just so nice, like providing all this stuff publicly and, that he built. It's like really, really cool. It seems to be doing that as they're really good about releasing the data and actually, getting the time to blog about it, right? Because this is obviously on their blog, but it has links to the open source artifacts that they have for doing the threat modeling and how they have the developers doing it, right? Like that's kind of the panacea, right? Like that's the goal with threat modeling, is that the security team doesn't necessarily need to be there, and they're identifying threats and reducing threats. So it'll be interesting to talk to him about that and how it's gone. I always have a hard time as a consultant, right? Like stepping in and trying to tell people how to do threat modeling internal to their organization, because I can lay out something like what they've put together here, but I'm not implementing it, right? Like it's not on me. It's on me to train the security people that are going out and trying to do that with the different teams. So it'll be a good discussion. That's all I was trying to say. And I'm excited about that because it is something that pops up all the time. I mean, I know here locally with us, like our local OWASP group, they always want to talk about threat modeling because they're running, we got a bunch of people on ProdSec teams that are trying to get threat modeling going in their organizations. Some are more successful than others. So, yeah. Well, like the whole idea for, us is that we want developers to be because everybody talks about having developers have like security at the forefront of their minds, but nothing gives you that quite the same way as right from the beginning, as you're designing something, going through and being like, okay, here's all the individual components in a diagram. Let's walk through it and break down where it's almost like you've heard the concept of a pre-mortem, where you like pretend that some engagement or event or whatever already happened, or some product was released or whatever. And you pretend that you're doing the post-mortem on that for all the things that went wrong, and you just do that ahead of time. And that's essentially what it is, right? It's just a pre-mortem exercise where you're saying, like, here's all the things that could go wrong from a security perspective based off of this diagram. And you get them to really think about all of the areas that, like, things could go wrong, what risks, what controls are reasonable, right? That's part of it. Like, what's reasonable and we can build the most ultra secure thing, but is it like, does it make sense to do it that way? Where's the balance struck? So anyways, it's just the idea, and how he specifically does threat model training is really relatable. And that's the part that I can't wait for him to really describe to everybody, is like, the thinking process behind that. But anyways, that's like the expanded version of all that fun stuff.
Yep. Yeah. It'll be good. So, we're excited to have him on. And we've got other people coming up over the next couple of months, right? Like we've scheduled people out now. It's not every week, obviously, but it'll be good.
Yeah, we've got some good guests coming up now that some lazy person started doing what he was supposed to do all along. This guy. Yeah, actually, and speaking of that, on the topic of not doing things, I owe the people that from the last round, I still owe them the mail of swag. And then, I'm going to email the speakers from Midwinter. I didn't mention that to you. I'm going to be emailing the speakers from Midwinter's Con to have them, get their special swag, which I can't wait. I can't wait for someone to actually, because it's a secret, but once you see it, you're going to laugh. I promise. So it's awesome.
Good. Like always, if you've got people that are topics that you want to talk about, jump into the Slack channel. Let us know, right? Like I know, Derek, Eric, and there's a bunch of people that are in there that are always pretty active and willing to answer questions outside of me and Ken as well. It's a good group. And so that kind of brings us to our big topic today. I don't know if you've heard about like this whole like Facebook, right? Like it's apparently a thing, a social media site, right? People are on it, and apparently there was some sort of a breach, right?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. So we wanted to talk about the breach a little bit because there are some interesting takes and interesting things that have happened with the breach data and with Facebook's response over the last week.
Whoa. You're calling it breach data. Whoa.
Okay. So let's go back. Facebook's scraped data from a couple of years ago that's been on the dark web. And
after they vowed to crack down on that after 2016 election fraud and the 80 million records that were scraped by I forget their names, the Cambridge Analytica.
Cambridge Analytica. Yep.
They said that they were going to crack down on that, the whole scraping. Doesn't appear that happened. I don't know what else to say because now it's 533. So in a way, they did crack down by opening it up more. It's like a reverse psychology.
It's reverse psychiatry. Yeah. Reverse psychology.
If we give you more data, then you won't want it. See, that's why. That's how that works. Yeah.
Now, this was okay. And I told somebody this recently, like this was always the joke when I was at the bank, right? Was we had these compliance regs that we had to meet because we had protected data, right? Like personal data of all of our customers. And that was always the joke was, hey, if we just released it all on the web or we just, gave it away, we'd have to pay one single fine and then we'd never have to protect it again, right? Like we could just save all that money for years and years. And apparently that's what Facebook has decided to do, right? Like they just release all the data. They're going to deal with the fallout here over the next couple of weeks, and then everybody's going to forget about it and move on, right?
Sure. That's actually usually what happens with Facebook is something bad happens, and then everyone just keeps using it, so it doesn't. And by the way, if you work for Facebook, I'll give the devil's advocate standpoint here. So don't get mad. Don't log off or shut down yet. We'll talk about the responsibility of the users, because I don't know that I've seen anyone. Have you seen anyone talk about if these were accounts where people just didn't do the security kind of checkup stuff that you're supposed to do on your account to keep, presumably if you want to keep things private, keeping them private? Does anyone mention that at all? Like, I am curious if these are people that, I don't think you mentioned yet that have I been, you didn't mention that yet, right? About have I been?
No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, the answer to your question is I don't know, right? I haven't seen that research on it as far as what it is. I know it's specifically tied to the phone number. So realistically, right, they're scraping data, and that's the big, complaint or dispute that Facebook has is that it wasn't a breach. They were just using one of the API endpoints or one of the functions within the website itself to look up users based on phone numbers. But it's basically they went through sequentially and dumped phone numbers. And if the phone number was associated with an account, it came back with a name, an email address. Like I think there's 3 or 4 pieces of information that are in that breach data. And I have looked at it, right? Just full disclosure. I've looked at some of the breach data. I was going in and looking for personal connections to see if people that I knew that I need to be concerned about, like they should follow up on it. But you can do the same thing on have I been pwned.
What you're saying is you were trying to scam poor grandmothers out of their Social Security and retirement money. Is what you're saying. Hey, perfect. Good to know.
Yeah. Good to know. Yep, that's where I go. Yeah.
But interestingly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead. No, keep going. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to finish my thought on that. Like Facebook is disputing that it wasn't a breach. It was just someone that was scraping the data, right? And they were pulling it out. There is there's a whole subculture of data collection and selling that goes on, or a whole aftermarket between different services, right? And so part of me understands that response that Facebook has had. That hey, they utilized our functionality, they scraped the data, and now they're just giving it away on the dark web, as opposed to some of these other services that'll actually sell that to you as like research data, or some of those sites when you look up a phone number or you look up a name, they're pulling data from LinkedIn and other places, and then they're reposting it or repackaging it in a different form. So part of me understands the response there, but it does kind of do away with this whole idea that Facebook is responsible for protecting that data in the first place. So, yeah. What were you going to say, Cam?
I forget already. It doesn't matter. I was interrupting you anyways, as I tend to do sometimes. It's just how much of that is on people though? I mean, I guess, is there a reason to put your phone number into Facebook? I mean, a good reason. I don't know if I'm saying that because, they have apps, they have a marketplace, and there may be reasons, and maybe I guess, do they do I don't do text to FA anymore. So I try to stick to apps now when I do it, but are they doing text to FA? And maybe that's also I'd have to know what valid, good reasons to provide them with that data. I see people put their birthdays into Facebook, and I see them do that. And that's part of the breach data too, is the birth dates. And I'm like,
yep.
Why would you do that? So that somebody could tell you happy birthday? I mean, admittedly, sometimes I get happy birthdays or I used to, because I put in a fake birthday. but like, I know you have to kind of give your roundabout age, or they ask you for that.
Yeah.
But like, what, I guess I just not sure. So why I said, don't get mad if you're from Facebook is like, I'm sorry, but like, you are giving your information out, and like, I don't know what the terms of service look like for Facebook. Maybe it's like, well, I mean, there's a legality here, and clearly they don't
Well,
seem to be breaking the law. And it's sort of like, you made the choice to trust this social media site that connects you with other people and provides all of your pictures. Like, okay, sure, we got phone numbers and dates of birth and all that, or birth dates, but like, how much other information is on people's profiles? A lot. Like, and so much so that I would argue that some people wouldn't want their employer to see what they post on Facebook, because, especially during this politically heated climate that we live in, a lot of people are kind of just venting on Twitter and Facebook. They're like, whatever they're feeling in the moment. And again, like, some of that stuff's there's a lot worse potentially for them than like birth dates and phone numbers. And so I guess my point is, like, unless there's like a really valid reason, I don't understand why people are giving this information away to begin with. I mean,
yeah,
I don't.
Well,
Now,
I mean,
I will say, however, I will say, there, like, you could say that, make that same argument for Twitter, and I would be a hypocrite on there, because I'm fairly certain I had provided my phone number there. I'm not certain if that was, I don't remember anymore if that was for 2FA or if that was just part of like a secondary way to do account recovery, right? Which is the other thing that we haven't really mentioned, is that when you go into, say you've lost your password and then you've like, switched phones and you've lost all your 2FA backup codes and all that stuff, right? There are ways that Google and Twitter and other companies have to recover your account that require this sort of data, right? This extra information. And so maybe there are some valid reasons there. And in that point, again, this is back to Facebook kind of being like, hey, you didn't make it hard enough for people to scrape. I think there is a balance here between how much information you share and how much the platform needs to do to prevent the automation, the automated collection of everyone's data.
Yeah. Well, so Facebook is about connecting people, right? I mean, if we really go back to it, yes, it's an ad generator, right? Like, at this point, but like, it's all built around this idea of connecting people. And that's always been one of the things that it is attempted to do when you log in and you first sign up to the site is, oh, well, give us your credentials to your email, and we will go and find all the people that you are connected with in your email by email address and connect with them. And so I think that's where initially the phone number came from, is, oh, it's now on your phone. I give you access to my address book, and it'll go out and it'll look up people based on that. And then even then, with the integrations with WhatsApp, where you're already texting people through WhatsApp using phone numbers, right? Like, you're trying to, you're kind of tying this together, which part of me understands, but it still freaks me out a little bit, right? Even with Signal, that when people pop onto Signal that are in my address book, right? Like, all of a sudden they just like get imported in, and I'm like, whoa, right? Like, Signal knows who you are and is giving me data about you, right? Like, yes, I already have it, but that feels a little
well, especially for a secure platform like that.
Yep.
Yeah. I get the notifications when like someone that was in my contacts, like, they're on Signal now, and you're like, cool.
Oh, cool.
Good to know. Okay.
Well, and that was
you and I had a situation in which a psychopath who stalked one of their employees, when that employee went on Signal, their assumption was that employee was being subversive and trying to, in finding, again, a psychopath that we know of. It was like, oh, this employee is like trying to look for another job, and somehow that's like them being evil or something like that. And so there was a real, and that person came to us, and so there's a real in that, because again, that employer got the notification and went that route mentally, there's a danger in that even. So it's like, you never really know like the ramifications of what this kind of stuff leads to, essentially. Like
Well, and I mean, this is just it, right? Like if it's difficult for you and I, and this always goes back to the usability factor of these things and security usability specifically, because if it's difficult for you and I, it's more difficult for someone that has no idea of like how to protect themselves or what's privacy information, like my parents, your parents, like just people that aren't as technically savvy. It's a much more difficult prospect, because if Facebook pops up with a window that says we need your phone number, you can't log in, with a small skip down in the bottom, what are they going to do? They're going to put in their phone number, right? Like that's just human nature, is to give that information away, and that they're trusting of that platform. I mean, yeah, there's the whole like scam of the calls and everything like that goes along with it, right? Like, but where was I going with this? Derek is bringing up some good points, right? Like asking whether or not we authorize Signal to allow access to the phone book. And honestly, I've been on Signal for so long, I don't remember at this point.
Same.
But so yeah, that's just it. Like we can look it up.
Let me look it up. I'm curious now.
Yeah, the fact that like we have problems with it, you start looking at what's happened. I don't want to get super political here, but with that congressman from Florida using Venmo, trusting Venmo with data, and that's like a social payment platform, and you can go and track who he's paid and who he's paid has paid, right? Like, and the information that's coming out of there is fairly damning as to what's going on with him. But that's the whole idea, is you're trusting those platforms to protect that data, and they are inherently about sharing data with other people. So their controls, while they will view that as private, the second that you authorize other individuals to see data, it's going to be shared with those other individuals. And yes, there should have been some sort of scraping controls. They probably shouldn't have allowed for enumeration of accounts via a phone number, an iterative identifier, right? Like I go back to, this is probably an example of insecure direct object reference, right? Like I've accessed data that I probably shouldn't have access to, and I'm doing that through a number that I can iterate over and over again. I don't know how long it took the attackers in this case, like I'm using that term loosely, but
yeah, very loosely,
very loosely, to actually dump this data. But it's an interesting use case, right? Like friends and I have talked for years about just gathering up the information that's available online and throwing it into a huge Elasticsearch database. And it's similar to what Troy Hunt over at Have I Been Pwned has been doing, is he's just collecting the data that people have already collected, and he's giving it back to the community as a resource for security purposes. It'd be very easy to go collect that data and use it for nefarious purposes. Like you were saying, Ken, it would be easy to target, people based on information that's in that breach. Call someone up, you have their name, you have their birthday, you pretend that you're a bank, you also have location data about them. Like you can go and find, if they're on LinkedIn, if they're on these other services, you start to tie all this together. And that's always been the fear, is this kind of police state, this knowledgeable state that, or it doesn't even have to be state, this organization that can put this information together and then exploit people based on it. Like you are fooling yourself if you don't think that other countries are collecting that information. Like, we are, that all of that's in a big database, probably multiple locations all over the world, and it's being mined for nefarious purposes, whatever purposes those individuals and those organizations have. So what'd you figure out? Does it have access to your address book?
So I went into my settings and I could not find a setting for it. So I looked it up on their support forum, and no, yes and no. So how does Signal know my contact is using Signal? Signal periodically sends truncated, cryptographically hashed phone numbers for contact discovery. Names are never transmitted, and the information is not stored on the servers. The server responds with the contacts that are Signal users and then immediately discards this information. Your phone now knows which of your contacts is a Signal user and notifies you if your contact just started using Signal. That sounds very much like your phone book was used to ascertain phone numbers. They're cryptographically hashed, truncated numbers.
I don't know if you can see that. No, I'm just looking at the Signal configuration, right? Like the
system
Signal
settings, right?
System settings, yeah. And it says contacts.
Yeah.
And I think you had to turn that on initially so that you could contact people, right? So it is definitely, it does have access to the address book. And I don't know how well it would function if you were to turn that off.
I have no idea. I know it says also, why did someone see that I joined Signal? People who already know your number and already have you in their contacts see that they can contact you on Signal. Nothing is sent to them by your Signal app or Signal service. They just see a number they know is registered. If someone knows how to send you an insecure SMS, we want them to see that they can send you a Signal message instead. So to your point, your system settings, it's not in the Signal app, but in your system level settings, it has access to your contact book, and I'm going to disallow that now. And there was another interesting thing too. While I was in here, I was able to I didn't realize I had read receipts on, so I turned that off. I hate doing read receipts. I hate that. It's the worst.
You hate that people know that you have, let's see.
That I have a tendency to procrastinate on responding to messages. Yeah, I don't want them to know that. At all.
Oh, you're funny. Yeah.
Am I though? I think it's just terrible. I think I'm just terrible. Yeah. But,
I totally agree, because that's one of those that my kids always complain about. Well, I didn't know if you got the message or not because your read receipts are off, and I'm like, yep, you're right, they are. There's a reason for that.
Yep. No, but I love it when other people have them on. I just hate it when I just don't want to have mine on.
Yeah. Okay. So, we're giving information to these platforms, right? So we totally went down a Signal, obviously both Ken and I are on Signal. If you didn't know that, you do now.
Yes, if you didn't. Yeah.
But that's pretty standard.
If you're in our contacts or we're in your contacts, then you definitely know.
You already know that. Yeah. It already told us. Well, and that's what's always weird to me about taking Facebook out of it, right? Even some of these other social media sites, right? I'm going to be honest, the need for a social payment site where I see what other people were paying people for is so creepy and weird to me, right? I don't understand what the point of that is, right? Are you really going on Venmo to look and see who's paying for pizza or what is the point of that? This happened
with my landscaper yesterday. So I had to, I'm not even kidding. This happened yesterday. I had to go take a photo of their you can show your QR code and link it. Yeah. So I did that, and I was going to make the payment. And then I saw that a bunch of people, not only did they post what they paid and what they felt about the work, but also what work was done. And I was I don't think I would want your customer, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't want people to know that I had. It's not even something that I'm concerned about. It's just I don't want. Why would I give away more information than I have to? Why would I? That doesn't. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that goes back, as well, to Nextdoor and some of those other sites that are just so local, and you're giving away so much information, and then you're trusting that the platform is doing something proper with it or secure with it. And then when someone does scrape Facebook and gets all that data, what does Facebook do? They turn around and they say, no, it wasn't really a hack. And then the other thing, this is what I was going to post, what just came out a couple of days ago, is they're actually not going to notify anyone that their account was exposed. They're just saying, yeah. And
that's what people are upset about.
Yeah. That you have to go to Troy Hunt. You have to go to the breach data to actually see whether or not you were in that list.
And ironically, type in
Yeah, type in your phone number
and your email address.
And so at which point it does, like, it's creepily like, oh, actually discovering again, what's there, or I don't know. It's just
not that I don't trust Troy Hunt. That's not the point. That's not at all the point. The point is just kind of, it's just irony and it's funny.
Yeah.
It's snark. It's snark for the sake of being snarky.
Yeah, it really is. But I don't know how to protect against something like this, right? Like, I know you started to talk about anti-automation. Like, it goes back to development. It goes back to the application itself.
This is why I used to love Google Voice, by the way, because I had essentially a proxy number for my real number, and that was wonderful. Like, I'm sure there's another way I'm sure there's services for this, where you can just essentially set up a number that gets forwarded to your real number so that, if it is, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't know on there's plenty ways for Facebook to fix this. There's absolutely 1,000 ways for Facebook to fix this. That's not the problem. But for as an individual to fix this, because you do have to put your phone number in it. Well, it helps with a lot of the services that, again, someone said this, and I love, remember who said this on the podcast? They said, if I think it was on the podcast, they said, if you don't pay for the service, you are the service, I think is the statement. And this is absolutely, but anyways, having a proxy like phone number would be very useful for sure. So long as, obviously it's not tied in any collectible way back to your phone number, should you want to, because you can like be very specific, and if you have like an allow list of numbers that you are okay with reaching out to, or services that you're okay reaching out to, that would be amazing. But like, I can tell you Verizon's still terrible at blocking spam phone calls. I still have a Nevada area code number, so whenever I get Nevada phone numbers, I know immediately what it is, and so I get them all day long. I get 3 a day, every day. Great job, Verizon. Really nailing it on the block and spam. Well, now I just told people what my provider is. Damn it.
See?
I just happened.
And you're sharing it on YouTube of all places.
My data on YouTube. Now everybody knows. Damn it. You got me. I got me. Yeah, no, but anyways, so I'm getting tons of spam phone calls. And who did we have on that talked about the new standards during the conference? Or I think it was our first conference. We had someone on. One of the speakers talked about the new standard to prevent this stuff.
She's over at, is she over at Auth0? Yeah. I'll look up her name shortly. But what I was going to say was the feature on your phone, right? Like, I finally went and implemented like that. Basically, Apple has an option to only accept calls, or iOS, and I know Android does as well, but only accept calls if the person, number one, is in your contact list, or number two, it's a number that you have reached out to in the past, right? Or like you've already made a call to. So it actually eliminates 90%, 95% of those calls from getting through. I see a lot of spam calls come in that just go straight to voicemail or go straight to just being unanswered because of like that new option, whatever it is. But as far as who talked about that,
I know, it's driving me nuts.
Let's see, I know who it is, right? Because we saw her at DevSecOps Days too, I think is where it was.
It wasn't Kat, was it?
No, it wasn't Kat. It was, that's midsummer. Let's see. Neil, Paul, no, maybe it wasn't on it wasn't Heather. Naomi? No, that's EFF. No, I know who you're thinking of.
Yeah,
because
I'd have to go back through. I think it's actually, maybe now that you're saying that, maybe it's one of our. It could be one of our episodes. I'd have to go back and look through one of our episodes for like phone or something like that. I don't know what I would look for. It's been we've had 100. So, whoa, it was Kelly Robinson here. It was episode 82.
Yep.
Kelly
the shaken and stir stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So go back and listen to that episode, right? Like that's, that's all fun stuff. But part of that is that authentication of user data, right? Like the data that's coming through the phone, the POTS network, as far as what's actually being allowed and what's authenticated. Because there's not a lot of authentication there as far as, hey, if I have this number and I tell you that I'm from Verizon, it will tell you I'm from Verizon, right? Like the way that the phones trust each other and the data that's sent along with it.
I will say that it's gotten better at like the whole potential spam and then silencing it while basically while I had do not disturb on it, silences those calls if it's potential spam. So yeah. Anyways,
well, and that was it. Like Ken Toller brought that up on Slack, right? He's like, the only problem he's had is doctor's appointments, right, for spam calls, because you call one number and they always call back from another one when they're responding. So you have to watch it pretty closely. But honestly, it's been a little bit of a hassle for me personally, but it's been worth it. That I just like the phone. Like at this point, I get so many calls. I've been associated with the number for so long, and it's out there on business cards from previous companies and all of this, right? Like it's just, if somebody wants to talk to me, they've got to leave a message, is what it boils down to. But then you play the game. If that other company is doing the same thing and filtering those numbers, you're never going to actually talk, right? That's
I did that, but then it turns out my voicemail was full and I didn't know it, and it was like took some text messages to figure that out. It's people being like, your voicemail's full. I'm like, you're a fool. And I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. Yeah, but no, but so yeah, like I definitely still get spam. It's getting a little better, but still pretty terrible. I don't know. How do we get even off on this conversation? We talked about Signal, we went from Facebook. I don't know. This is what happens when we don't have any like hard topics for the day. I know one thing Derek asked was like where, channels to get a useful information and
like what we monitor for news, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I monitor your typical sites, Register, Bleeping Computer, like all this, all the tech sites. When I said the Register, that's not what I meant. Jesus. The
Reddit?
No. Well, I do look at Reddit, but not that often. Well, not for computer security. I actually tend to look at like jujitsu stuff a lot on Reddit more than anything. But so Slack is the biggest one for me, Seth. Like because we're in a couple professional Slacks, so that one's been big for me. But here's the funny thing, like I know I've been bashing the hell out of like security Twitter, basically, right? Meaning bashing as in like it's not been helpful. I thought I went back on and I have like since filtered through sort of like to try and clean up like what I'm seeing, and so now I'm coming back to Twitter and figuring out where to get useful information. There is useful information there. It just seems like you have to do a lot of work to find it.
You have to curate, right?
Right.
You liberal use of unfollow and following, and right, like it seems to be I go through a cycle and then I'll follow a whole bunch of people, and then over time my feed becomes less relevant, and then I have to go back through and kind of recurate and retrain the algorithm to give me what I want. You can create lists and things like that. And that may not be a bad idea that we actually do that over time, is create like an absolute AppSec list of, people we follow for content.
Ooh, I like that idea. Yeah.
Because it would be something that we could share out fairly easily. I'm
clearly bad at Twitter because every time I do anything on Twitter, I lose followers. So my numbers actually go up. If I don't do anything, if I say one thing, I just lose followers. And we're not talking about controversial things. We're talking about like, we have a podcast today, like nothing of any very informational things. And like, I'll immediately lose followers. So I'm sure that's me.
It's all the bots.
Twitter, right?
They don't like the fact that you're putting out actual content.
You're not one of us. Yeah, no. I'll just start writing my tweets in a very bot-like manner.
No, I mean, the other thing that I recommend honestly, Clint's TLDR sec, right, is
huge.
always like he spends time like curating that, and it's excellent. And then what's
Daniel
the other
Miessler?
Daniel Miessler's newsletter? Both of those newsletters on a weekly basis are amazing, right? Like I don't know, I can't plug them enough, right? Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I haven't really read She Hacks Purple's newsletter. Have you? I haven't. I really haven't read it. I did like a long time ago, but when she first started, I think I read one, but I don't know. I haven't really checked it out. If you have, I just know that's another one that people. Let's see. What else? OWASP, probably not so much. Not getting. I mean, they have their. I haven't seen actually. Have you seen a newsletter from OWASP?
No, I really haven't. Right? Like I mean, OWASP is kind of so disparate. I mean, there's the central org, there's Andrew, and like the national level.
When's the last time I got
but it's pretty small. Yeah, I haven't really paid attention to the global stuff. It's kind of the projects that I end up following, like the OWASP Top 10, like Brian and those guys, or the API stuff that's coming out. So it kind of on a project basis, those guys will tweet things out. There's some good things that go on there. Now that it's all in GitHub, you can almost star some of those repositories and get information that way as well. I do like I know it's kind of a misnomer, but our NetSec over at Reddit, it has a lot of exploit data and interesting approaches. Every once in a while, some of like I think it's web security on Reddit. That's where Portswigger and those guys will actually post content, and it might be web security research. I can't remember what the exact subreddit is, but both of those are pretty good because they are curated as well. So it's not just random stuff. There's some good techniques that come out of there. There's some good exploits, but that's kind of a good touch point for. There's some stuff going on the application security side of things, but there's also a lot going on the network security side of things, and what the exploits and breaches look like. Those don't always feed over into something like TLDR sec or Daniel Miessler's newsletter.
Here's the question I wanted to answer was like, do you get info from following people or from hashtags? And I've found from following people, but also like I get added occasionally to groups, and then I'll just like, if the group looks cool, I'll subscribe to it, and that helps too. So like, there's, and admittedly, I have not done that in a long time because I kind of jumped off the Twitter train for a while just because it was, I don't know, only so many times I can hear about Donald Trump or whatever people's feelings are of the day that they're pissed off about. And it's like, I can only hear so much negativity in a day. That's, to be frank, that's what it was. That's just too much political shit, too much whatever going on. And it just bums me out. And it's not for me. But there are there's like lists that you can follow. And so occasionally there will be like lists that I see that are like interesting. And so I'll just follow those lists. But again, I haven't done that in a long time, so my list probably sucks.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying is that's probably where we need to go. Is we'll create like an absolute AppSec list, right? Of just like a news list, a security list, like a couple of those. We can start to curate some of that content, and that's one of the things that we're hoping to do is to put together some more community resources out of Absolute AppSec. If you're interested in helping us develop a checklist or something along those lines, we'd love to have you join the team and help us push that out, because it's it's becoming more of a community. We really enjoy doing it, and honestly, right, like if you're willing, let us know.
Yeah, I'm excited about this, the new direction to open it up to more than just you and I, to make it more of a community effort to curate content, speakers, trainings, whatever. This is I think there's a lot of value that we know, and we have enough people in our circle and community that we can really, I think, provide like some incredible value to everyone, and more than just, you and I. Obviously we have our opinions and experiences, but those are limited to just the two of us. So it's better to get, I think, the broader collective's opinions. And
well, yeah, what were the discussions that we had on diversity? The more people that we include, the better that the quality that we get, the more experience that gets pulled into it, and the different viewpoints are what are interesting to both of us. There's a reason that we have guests on from across the industry, from different backgrounds, from different professions. It's because that's what it makes us all better, to hear those viewpoints. And the more that we can help others, give others a platform to speak about those things, I think is going to be better for all of us in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. And I like being able to say, I was wrong, and this person has a take that I can totally see makes more sense. And that's what different voices gives you. So I think that's a good thing. Always reassessing your stances.
Yep.
Not
it is
too much to one.
Yeah.
So
what was it? When you learn something new, well, yeah, you do better when you know better, right?
Yes.
Good. Well, I think we're at about an hour, Ken. I mean, not quite, but pretty close.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
This is farther than I thought we'd get. So here we go.
Well, good. If, as always, join us on Twitter, follow at Absolute AppSec, or Ken and I personally. Join us on Slack. There's a lot of good conversation that goes on there, good questions. And let us know if there's other guests. I know there's a couple of suggestions that have been popped in there, and topics that you would like to cover. I know Eric was bringing some stuff up on LinkedIn about language matters, and that might be something we want to discuss at some point, like what we call different vulnerabilities. Could be an interesting discussion as well. But yeah, join the conversation. That's what we're here. That's what we're all about. And
next week,
join us next week to talk about threat modeling and how to get developers to do it. So you can go take a vacation, apparently, because that's what the podcast was all about.
All right.
Anyway.
Awesome.
So all right. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll just go ahead and call it for this week. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.